It's time to play ball. Welcome to the podcast with no limits. Whether it be sports, current events, or random thoughts, this is the place to step in and stay a while. Your host is a proud alumnus of Rio Hondo Prep, a former minor league baseball umpire, and a man with strong opinions. Welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast and your host, Matt Hersema.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Get Home Safe. It's a Friday edition of the podcast, so that means a nice long-form interview with another wonderful guest. And we do have another wonderful guest today, a Rio Hondo Prep alum, someone I've wanted to have on the program for quite some time. He was gracious enough to sit down with me and spend some time here talking about his time in Rio, his career, maybe some sports, some friends, maybe even this podcast a little bit. So let's bring him on the program. We are joined today by Dave Joe. And Dave Joe is from the class of 1991 of Rio Hondo Prep, played on a championship football team there. He's currently a CPA. Let's bring him on the program here as he's coming in from the waiting room. As long as I don't mess it up, of course, with my technological issues. But there he is. Dave Joe, welcome to the Get Home Safe podcast.
Well, thank you, Matt. I know this has been a long time in the works. You finally pinned me down. Or at least our schedules matched.
Absolutely, man. You know, I hate pestering people, but I know that some people have shown interest, and I ask and I ask and I ask, and it's just I'm glad we're finally able to do it.
Yep, I'm glad too. So I'm looking forward to chatting with you and getting caught up here. I know we didn't run in the same circles, mainly due to age difference, but obviously the common link is Rio Hondo Prep.
Well,
and
yeah.
I see we're both wearing our prep t-shirts here.
Yeah, we didn't coordinate that at all, man. We look like twins here with glasses on and anyway. No, it's been great doing the podcast, talking with so many people. And one thing I found is even if you are not in the class or around school at the same time as people, it's almost like you were once you start talking. So anyway, I know we've chatted a little bit here and there, but I appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy day here. Dave, we're going to talk about Rio Hondo football. We're going to talk about maybe some of your friends, some of your leaders, and kind of what you do now. But first, I want to talk about a dear friend of ours, Pete Clark, who had some health issues not too long ago. It really is a miracle what he has gone through, and to see all the support that he's received. So, what are your thoughts on your good friend Pete Clark?
He is my brother in both the not the literal, but definitely the spiritual sense of the word. We grew up together. We've known each other since 5th grade. It was funny when I was visiting Pete after his procedure, when he finally got back home from the hospital. We were having dinner there with his family and his mom, and I was telling my girlfriend, who had not really met Pete yet, but you know, I always had as a kid 2 celebrations at every major holiday, you know, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas. I would do my family, but then I would quickly shuttle over to Peter's house and I would have a secondary celebration. So they all, and Mrs. Clark and the Clark family always treated me as one of their own. And I much appreciated that. And we would have these we call them tape ball games out. And I remember out in his front street, and we're telling stories of tape ball. It was left-handed because, you know, the street was not that big. So we had to play left-handed tape ball. But anyways, yeah, so he's a very close, dear friend of mine. And I'm so happy he's on the recovery, on a good path of recovery.
Yeah, PC4 baby. He's doing great. And it's been outstanding to see how many people have stories like you, Dave, with Pete. I mean, he's touched a lot of lives, and newly married.
I want to say I should get credit for introducing him to the Chinese culture, because it's funny. People will say he's more Chinese than me. So a little insight here. So I'm a banana. Y'all know what a banana is. I'm yellow on the outside, white on the inside. But Pete, he actually can speak better Chinese than me. He actually communicates better with my family members than I do.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
Yes.
So Pete's your translator.
Yes.
We're home. Wow, who would have thought, man? That is great.
And you got to get him on the show. He has nothing but time now, so he has no excuses.
Okay, Pete, you heard that. You heard that from your brother, Dave Joe here. So you got to get on. Yeah, hopefully once you're good enough to sit around and talk with me for a while. Well, Dave, you talked about childhood a little bit. Where did you grow up? And you sound like you were in care kind of early. How did that all start?
Yeah, so I grew up on a street called Muscatel. So for all your listeners are listening to the Patricio podcast that you published this morning, that house that his dad built was literally across the street from the house our parents raised us in. Wow. So that was pure coincidence. So I don't know if you knew that, but that is a true story. I remember Mr. Taylor taking my brother and I one time. He goes, "Hey, I used to live right there." We're like, "What?" so that yeah, I started at care at 8 years old. I was forced in by my parents, my mom. My mom was the matriarch of our family. And she said, my brother had a school friend that kind of asked him, "Hey, you want to play?" So my brother expressed interest to my mom. And my mom, through her wisdom, was, "Okay, well, if my brother Harry's going to go play, then you got to take your little brother David as well." So I didn't asked to play. I didn't have any interest or expressed any interest, but it was my mom. My mom pushed me over there.
Mama knows best. That's great. So you and Harry's a few years older than you. How was that relationship? Not only as kids, but then as you kind of got into your teenage years at Rio.
Yeah. He's 18 months older than me. So believe it or not, even though we're only fundamentally 1 year apart, growing up, we never ran in the same circles. So growing up, he had his group of friends and I had my group of friends, and there was little overlap. Even a school the size of Rio, it didn't overlap. It wasn't until we got into our adult lives that we actually became, in my opinion, much closer. And a lot had to do with we're both finance. We both have a financial background from a technical training and studies, and our career paths. We both have a financial background. So we definitely think alike, and we share that in common. And it's through there we probably got a lot closer as we got older.
Interesting. Yeah, I was 3 years older than my brother, so we were never on the same team and kind of had different groups of friends and things. But as we got older in life, we became very, very close, and in a fun way. We still tease each other and things like that. But we're brothers, and brothers do brother things. So you haven't
yeah. I'm going to spend a whole week with him down in Disney World with his family. I'm taking my girlfriend Rhea Jane and her 9-year-old daughter. We're gonna spend the whole week at Disney World with his family, and we're going down at the same time. So it's gonna be a good time.
Well, had a great time indeed. Dave, let me ask you about Care Youth League. What was your early experiences, and who were some of the teammates and or opponents really that you were playing against?
So let me just start by saying, and I say this all the time, and people don't believe me, I don't have a lot of memories before 5th grade.
Okay.
So years like first 2 or 3 years of care, I really don't have a whole lot of memories, to be quite honest with you. I don't even know who my first coach was. So sorry, whoever's listening, that may have been my first coach as an 8-year-old Indian kid. I don't really remember. I remember Rick Johnson being on my team because he was the best player. So I do remember that. I remember being slightly intimidated by Rick as a little Asian kid, not knowing, never played a sport before. And here's this kid that knows exactly what to do and is good at it. It wasn't until 5th grade where I actually have concrete memories. And I remember, Dave Reed being my 5th grade teacher at Rio. That's when I changed schools. So it had a lot to do with me changing schools to Rio, where I start having these vivid memories. And that's where the lifelong friends of, Peter, Clark, Todd, Rick, Jeff Valdez, John Creel, all those guys, were my classmates, and where I had true memories of that. And I was on at the time we call, you gravitated out of the club teams, Atlantic, Indian, Cowboys, Coral. That was my generation. Once you got into more of the junior high age, like the 5th grade years, they went to, believe it or not, colors: orange, blue, green, and red.
What?
And then but they attached names to them, like Bruins, Vikings was the orange team, and like the red teams were like Wildcats. I can't remember. The green team was Irish, I think. I can't. But anyways, they're known as orange, red, green, and blue, and I was on the orange team. So I do remember that Chris Horton was my orange team leader for many years. He's the one that really got me immersed into the program. I was already going to Rio. I remember him picking us up for church. He would pick us up from church, my brother and I, at our street. So yeah, so a lot of good memories with Chris Horton and Mart Hartwig and Greg Bollinger. Those were my coaches during my era with the orange team.
The orange team. Wow, that's funny.
Bruins, I guess.
Well, you go to Rio Hondo Prep, where sports they're important. They're a big part of the curriculum, we'll say, and school's important too. But let's be honest, we people show up for football games, not chemistry experiments. So, what was your experience like at Rio? You already mentioned some names. I still feel, and I've talked to a lot of guys, John Lee and Todd Carson, and guys that were on those teams. I still think you had one of the greatest groups of guys in RHP history. You won a football championship in 1990. You guys had the best basketball team Rio's ever had. Just a tremendous group of guys. And Rick Johnson said something that it wasn't necessarily about the talent, even though you guys were extremely talented. It was kind of the bond you guys all had. So was that kind of your experience as well?
Yeah, well, thank you for those great compliments to our class of 91, which I do have a bias towards. But thank you for those kind words. Arguably, I know there was some great teams and classes throughout the RHP history. We'll debate till the end of time on who the best was. But I would agree with Rick. I did listen to Rick's podcast. Our whole class theme our senior year was all about unity and team. So that was always our mantra. From the early days of 6th grade, we were taught by, Coach Drain, the pyramid success. So it was a very wooden based, and, he made us read the book, They Call Me Coach. And, so we always had that mentality, team came first. And I honestly think all of the people I played with always accepted that mantra. And I think that's why we were so good, because we believed in it. It wasn't we bought into it. You hear that term all the time. Oh, the team bought into the coach's vision. I think it was more than that. We more than just bought into it. We believed it. It was something real that we still hold on to today. I hold that philosophy throughout my whole professional career, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I learned just as much out of the classroom as in the classroom for me to be successful in the professional career I had. And I do believe if it wasn't for that core RHP leadership training, I don't think I would have been as successful as I have been in my professional life.
Wow. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the moments and just all the different things that Rio students go through. It prepares you. I mean, the future is now, right? As they always say in care, and it spills into Rio as well. So absolutely. Well, tell me, Dave, about, let's talk a little football. We'll kind of go through, the sports here, but you were a guy, I seen some video, but I've heard the stories really. You were a guy that was, you're a very friendly guy now, but on a football field, I heard you were pretty tough, pretty nasty, pretty vicious.
Yeah, it's, I do have this persona, and I do believe it. It's hard for me to see myself, right? Because I don't see myself act the way I do on a football field. I can see it on film, but you don't see all the mannerisms and the words being said on the field. I've been told, and I do believe it because I've been told this in the workplace environment as well. Dave, we go to happy hour with you. You're one guy, but when you're in the office, you're this whole other guy. And so that's why I believe it. I've been told that my whole professional career. So as I listen to some of these broadcasts and people describe how I was when I was a high school player, I kind of believed in that. because that's how I am today. Like once I, you button up the chin strap and you step on the field, I did become a whole different person. And it wasn't because for any selfish goals. It was all about that team. The biggest fear I always had, I remember this as a player, was letting my teammates down. That was my biggest fear. My biggest fear was not losing. My biggest fear was letting my teammates down or Coach Drain down. Coach Johnson, Coach Lenny. That's what drove me. I wanted to be, I was very coachable. That's my term. That's the term they always use. I was very coachable. Why? Because if they're telling me to do something, I can't rely on my physical gifts because I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the strongest. So my was always, I got to beat them mentally and with technique. And so whatever the coaches told me, I absorbed and I tried to. So I always thought myself as very coachable. And I think I proved that because, now my passion is golf, and my golf instructor is like, oh man, a couple of lessons you're there. I say, yeah, I've always been told I was coachable.
Absolutely. And I always love football players who are that kind of tough as nails mentality. They're going to get the job done. Right. And you were a linebacker, and Dave, I kind of asked you this off the air, but what is it about? Why aren't there more Asian kids playing football? And the ones that do, they're not quite like you in the sense that, I mean, you were one of the leading tacklers, I think, or maybe the leading. I'm not sure if you were or not, but you and Rick Johnson being linebackers. I mean, I wouldn't want to carry the ball against you guys. And then you ran the ball, of course. So you were key, important positions. But I guess my big question is, how come there aren't more Asian kids playing football?
Well, one I think is I would say DNA. Not to stereotype, but Asians. And I don't think my brother and I kind of fit the stereotype of Asians because we're a little bit on the plus size. Not in high school, but even now. But even our framework was a little bit bigger. But typically Asians are a little bit more smaller in stature. So they're not going to get the D1 scholarships, and they're not going to, for sure, not gravitate to the NFL. So professional football, which is an American sport, doesn't translate well to China. And then, most of the Chinese kids here that are, first generation. So my parents immigrated here. I was born here. Their parents don't understand football. And it's kind of a violent sport. And, Chinese are typically non-violent until, this latest uprising, but typically they're non-confrontational. But anyways, I think just the whole culture of the sport, the physical demand, and what generally Asians are, it just doesn't drive kids to play football. For me, it was different. I already said I'm a banana. So I had a different mindset. So my mindset was a little bit different. I remember when I stepped on the field, I did kind of play with reckless abandon. And so I think the coaches like that, and my peers loved that. And I remember playing football. I was like, man, I'm like usually smaller than most people on the field. I better hit them before they hit me.
Yes.
Because so that always stuck in my head. And that's not something I would say the coaches taught me. And it's just something I kind of figured out. If I hit them first, it's going to be a lot less painful. So that was always my mentality, whether it was defense or offense. I got to go hit them first before they hit me. So I did play with a little bit of reckless abandon. And I think that's why most Asian kids don't gravitate necessarily to tackle football.
Yeah, I'm not stereotyping or anything. I'm just trying. I generally am curious because officiating all the years I did, you just didn't see it too often. And you're one of the best football players Rio's ever had. So I just was like, what's the connection here? Disconnect.
It does remind me. I listened to Dave Ramos's podcast, and I didn't know this, but I am curious since I heard on his podcast. Do I still hold the single season record for tackles? I don't know that. I heard Dave Ramos mention it.
We got a job for Mark Carson to dig up the archives for us. That's funny. So real quick, what did you prefer in foot? First of all, did you run the ball on offense or
no? I always played on the line. It wasn't until my senior year I switched to tight end. So I did go out for the 3 pass plays that Coach Johnson called per game.
So, so, so offense or defense? I think I know the answer, but what did you prefer, offense or defense?
Defense.
Oh yeah.
And you gotta love, you know, Coach Lenny passed away a couple years ago. But I loved him. He first tried to stick me at that deep safety position as a sophomore.
Really?
And I was slow. Yeah, I was slow. And I played linebacker as a freshman on JV. So he thought I was too small. So I played freshman JV linebacker. Then when I got to varsity sophomore year, he starts me the season at deep safety. And I'm like, I felt so uncomfortable because I was slow. I was 15 yards away from the ball. So I never played that far away from the ball on defense. And I was just like a fish out of the water. And after I think a first cut, I don't think I've ever even made it to a game. I was so bad in practice, he switched me to linebacker. That's how bad I was at safety. Like I couldn't even make it to the game. Like I was so bad in practice. But thank goodness Coach Lenny, because his defense and I'll say the defense design that Coach Lenny did for 8-man football. It was designed where the linebackers get all the tackles, right? So that's partly the reason why I got so many. It was also by defensive design.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the architect, indeed.
Yeah.
And he always said at least to us when we were playing for him, he would use you and Rick as the prototypes. He was like, he would say something along the lines of, you got to be either the Rick Johnson type of linebacker or the Dave Joe type of linebacker. And what do you think he meant by that?
This is the first time I'm hearing it. So this is no prep. I've never heard that before, Matt. So it's interesting you say that. So here's my speculation. Rick was 180. I was 145. And he was just more physical than I was. He was much stronger than I was. Mm-hmm. So he could out muscle, out power. And he always usually play the strong side linebacker if there was a strong side formation in 8-man football. And I think I was a 150. And remember, so my knack was I could read a play quickly and get to the ball. And I would never go through a blocker. My technique was I would pick a shoulder and try to get by him on one side of the shoulder or the other. But I made those decisions very quickly. I didn't hesitate. And I think that's what he meant.
Yeah,
I think that's what he meant.
That's what it gathered from me, because I was playing alongside Landon Goodwill, and I was like, well, I'm not Landon, and hopefully he gets blocked a lot, and I get to get in there, get more tackles. So I was good at reading things, and definitely a little undersized and not as talented as Landon, who played Division I football and all that. So yeah, Mr. Lunny was special, man. He was so special, and everyone I've talked to on this, I think he really made defense fun, and he was so brilliant. I mean, he taught Latin and boy choir, and then he's a defensive coordinator all these years. So unique. I mean, he passed away recently. What were some more of your thoughts on Gary Lunny?
Oh yeah, he was a great coach. He would call it as I see it, and just the interesting part was his intensity. Right, he brought the same intensity to a football practice as our choir practice. And we just didn't understand it as high school kids. We're like, it's choir, it's not football. But he would get so mad at us because we would have it at 8 a.m. in the old school Rio Pavilion. We would be freezing. It's 8 a.m. Please, and he would just get on us because we whatever, we weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing in choir or whatever. But those are one of the fondest memories. And, I just, he had all his, Gary Lenny, he had all his little isms. So, my grandma in for, I heard that one on one of your podcasts.
Oh yeah. My grandma in for Ursula. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember those.
If you missed an assignment or missed a tackle, which you probably didn't do too often, but if you did, you talked about letting your coaches down. I mean, you'd have to see Mr. Lunny's face and his reaction, and you're just like, I am so sorry. I'll never let it happen.
Yeah, come on. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I missed plenty of tackles. I'm sure I missed plenty of assignments, but unfortunately, I don't have a vivid memory. I do have a vivid memory, and it was on a good play, and maybe that's why I remembered.
There you go.
I remember I was playing a offside linebacker as a sweep away from me. and I kind of like trailed like I was supposed to. And then they ran a reverse, and I had done my job. I had kind of stayed home, and I came, and I guess I just plastered the guy. I remember I made a good tackle, but it looked, I think at the time I didn't understand it because I was doing the tackling. But when I saw that film, I understood why, because I remember when I got up, I did hear a big roar, and I looked to the sideline because I was the signal caller. So I was already getting ready for the next play. So I'm looking towards Coach Lenny for the defensive scene. And I just, his laugh, right? I almost could hear it, but I could see it. He is just chuckling. And I was like, I didn't get it at the time until I saw the film. And then I understood what he was chuckling at, because I guess I had almost like, I lifted the guy up and I kind of drove him back. And, when you're making a tackle, you don't know you're doing these things. You're just kind of, getting the tackle. I do remember that. So I do have great memories. And, even the more memories, my brother ended up marrying his daughter, Lindy.
I didn't piece that together, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so he did. Even far after he was done coaching, I would see him at all the Thanksgivings and Christmases.
Oh man.
And so he was still very into football even after he retired. And we would watch those games, and yes, so lots of good memories.
I could see him looking out at you, man, laughing, knowing, hey, I just drew this up. This kid did what he was supposed to, and then cream the kid. I mean, that did his heart well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He always wanted Matt, Joe, if you're listening, your grandfather always wanted you to be that linebacker. But you were a different type of player, Matt, if you're listening, and we appreciate that.
Oh man, yeah, that's he years later, another Joe took the football field. That's great. And Matt wore 15, right?
Yeah, that was my brother's high school jersey number.
Okay.
So that's why he wore 15.
My favorite number, and so that always jumped out to me. So yeah, number 15, love it. Okay, so basketball, Mr. Drain, he always told me, you gotta run the 1-3-1 like Dave Joe. No one runs it like Dave Joe. You gotta run the baseline. You gotta know when to trap. You gotta know how to. He was always telling me, you gotta do it like Dave Joe. He says Dave Joe's the best that's ever done it. So I know maybe you weren't a big time scorer, but you had big impact on the defensive side of the floor, right, in basketball?
Yeah, I remember that. So you mentioned it earlier in the lead in. Basketball was one of the great things we did as a team. I did not like basketball. And I think everyone in my team knew it. The only reason why I did it is because, just like Rio, everyone else played it. So I gave it 100% effort. But basketball was never my thing. And I quickly found out that if I wanted to play and I wanted to contribute, I can contribute with defense. Because you're right, I did not have a good shot. I was not a scorer. In fact, Coach Strain would tell me, letter requirements was you had to average 5 shots per game. He told me my senior year, I will waive that requirement. So please do not shoot. He goes, if you hit your percentages, you still get a letter. And that is of all the letters I got in my high school career, I only lettered in basketball 1 year, my senior year. And that's my most treasured. And I had to negotiate with Coach Strand. Okay, well, Coach Strand, I'm never going to get a letter in basketball because, you have this requirement. You have to average 5 shots per game, and then your percentages matter. He goes, I'll waive that. Please do not shoot. So I said, okay, Coach. But I did listen to Coach Strain's broadcast. Those were very nice words. But again, it was about not letting my teammates down. And it was my way of trying to find something I could contribute to the team. Mm-hmm. And, I told you just like you asked me the difference between Rick and myself, my strengths were, I was coachable, but also kind of the sports IQ. Like I do think I kind of knew where to be. I had a good feel of where the ball was going, and I can anticipate. And I was always with charges. Guys want the glory for the breakaway layup and do all this. So I kind of knew the spot they were going to, and I would just go to that spot. To me, it wasn't that hard. Like they have to go to that spot to do their lay-in. So I'm just going to get to that spot first. And they just didn't deviate because they weren't used to someone being in their spot. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how I thought of it.
My kind of guy, Dave. Me and you, man. Same player, basically in
No,
basketball.
man, I
anyway.
was not known as a dirty player.
I was dirty. What are you talking about? You be dirty, you got to be caught.
That's what I gathered in the podcast I've listened to.
I used to get guys so mad, but then I was doing some bad things. But taking the charges, a big love that stuff. And you guys dominated in football, really, and you won the championship in '90, the first title since 82.
82.
And even though the class or so before you, the Rod Heaton, Randy Johnson guys, they got to the finals. But you guys dominated football. But then you get to basketball, and even though you didn't like basketball, you guys went on this magical run. And you guys played out in Washington, D.C. I've heard that story a bunch of times when, Todd gets announced as a center and they laugh, and then you guys dominate. I mean, you guys got to the finals and lost, and then had a magical state run. So tell me specifically your feelings on that 91 basketball season.
Well, I think I was the only one that didn't. Everyone else loved basketball. I was just only me that didn't like basketball.
Yeah.
So Rick and Todd and those guys, they loved it. We didn't go to much school that senior year. I remember that because we were off doing all these sports stuff. Because that Washington D.C. trip was for a whole week, and it was the week before Christmas break. So when we got back from that trip to DC, we started our Christmas break. we didn't go a whole lot of school in the month of December, but yeah, those were, the girls team was actually very good as well.
Oh yeah.
So both teams were doing really well that time. And yeah, I think it was just a lot of years, you heard Coach Strain's podcast, that was just a buildup from sixth grade. I remember him scheduling these teams against us in eighth grade, and it was all part of it. They made us play pop corner football, and that was all part of it. We were pretty much battle tested, I think, by the time we were seniors, just a lot of the grind. But it was, we had a Hoosiers mentality. We watched that movie. It's funny. I remember the beginning of our senior season. Coach Strain loves the Mammoth area. So he took us to the Lone Pine tournament. I never understood it, like why you guys so far for a tournament. Anyways, I think we were at the firehouse. We stayed at some firehouse or something. It wasn't a hotel, and we put on the movie Hoosiers. Both varsity girls and boys basketball teams were watching. Yeah, so I remember we're like, that could be us. I remember the guy saying that, like, we started that Hoosier mentality. So every time we broke huddle, that's why we broke huddle. We said team.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, I love it.
So we started doing that at every for the rest of the season as we broke huddle.
Oh, no doubt. You guys, like I said, you guys won a bunch of games in the state, up north and down San Diego.
Yeah, we beat the San Diego champs, Central California champs. I remember when we beat the San Diego champs, we had to travel to San Diego, miss school, and all that jazz. And then once I remember after the game, they had announced the winner of our next opponent, and it was the Central California champs. And then Coach Strain was like, "Oh, we got to go to Fresno." And surprisingly, I remember this. Everyone on the bus cheered because we knew we were going to miss more school.
Yeah.
And Coach Strain didn't understand, like, why are you guys cheering when I just told you we have to go to Fresno in the middle of nowhere? Because we're like, we get to miss more school, Coach.
Yeah, it's very simple. Come on now. That's great. You guys go up there, you beat the champion up there in a close game, I believe. And then you get to the state game against Rebay, the rematch. You guys had it, man. And I know it's tough to talk about, I'm sure.
I know you've talked to Todd. Todd's a really close friend of yours. I know he's been open about it to you. And I listened to Coach Strain. I'll be honest with you, us as the class, I think it seems like Coach Strain actually holds on to that more than us. And I guess because as a coach, he wasn't a player, so maybe he finds it tougher. Mm-hmm. But when I listened to that podcast, I was like, oh my goodness, he's still holding on to that a little bit. But us as the players and as the class, I think we accepted it. It's a good story to tell. There's nothing at the end of the day, there's more to life than that game, but it was a great experience all the way around.
Mm.
I would say this, I think most players, and maybe it's different for you because you have such a close friendship with Todd. None of us really talked to Todd directly about it, even to this day.
Mm.
I remember coming back after the game. I did feel so bad because I believe that was his 5th foul, so he couldn't even play in overtime.
Yeah.
If my memory serves me correct. So that's even a worse feeling, right? Because you did that play, and then you're not able to play in overtime. I remember, and this is the worst thing ever. We weren't, and the school was not anticipating us to make that deep run. So they had scheduled the biggest fundraising event of the year that same night.
That's right.
It was called, back then it was called the I Care for Youth Banquet. That was the single biggest fundraiser event of the whole year in one night. And we were scheduled to perform as customary as the high school group. And I remember, I remember I think it was just Todd and I, because we got changed in the back of the varsity locker room. And I don't know if Todd remembers this, because I know he probably a lot of very emotional night for all of us that night. And I remember it was just me and him. We had just gotten changed, we gotten back, because we literally went off the bus, Matt, and we didn't even go home. We had to get ready to perform. So we had to do a whole wardrobe change. I'm sitting in the back of the varsity locker room, back in the corner of that building, the back parking property. And it was just Todd and I, and it was right before we had to walk on stage. And I just said, Todd, if you're not feeling up to it, just don't go out there. I mean, just stay here. And I left the room. And to this day, I don't remember if he ever got up and made it up on the stage. Maybe you could ask him. But I remember that vividly that night.
Mm. No, he told me, when we've talked about the story many times. And for those that don't know, Rio was in the state regional final. They were going to go to the state championship. Had they won this game in 91, they had lost to Rebay 30 points a week before in the CIF championship. They had the lead with, a couple seconds left, scored late, and Todd, a foul was called on Todd, we'll say, because I've heard it wasn't a great call, but
those refs.
Those referees, I tell you. So devastating. They had to go late to the floor, and anyway, they scored, sent the game to overtime, and Rio lost in overtime. So a devastating moment for my good friend Todd, who's, life goes on. But at the time, to your point, Dave, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear that there's more to life than basketball, and especially after one of your worst moments, to then have to go perform and, do something you didn't want to do. I mean, I took losses so hard. It killed me. And I remember specifically my final play in every sport that I ever played. And it's haunting, man, but you go on. So no, a special team, really great group of guys. And Todd Carson was a big part of that. And again, a tremendous friend of mine. Well, Dave, baseball's like the forgotten sport at Rio. You just, we need something to do in the spring. What were you a baseball guy or no? I mean,
no, actually baseball was my favorite sport. It just wasn't my best sport. But baseball was always forgotten sport. So good job to Mark Carson and JT Parker. They've really done a great job with the prep baseball program. Hands down. I know it started with Greg Loomis when he took over. I think baseball became more of a serious thing. But back when I was in high school, it was an afterthought, I would say, honestly. But it was my favorite sport. I loved playing it. And we actually made a deep run. We made it to the semifinals the senior year. So of the 4 semifinal teams, 3 of the 4 teams were prep league teams.
Wow.
It was us. Yeah, it was us, Chadwick, and Pauley. We played the semifinal game against Chadwick and we lost, even though I think our senior year, we actually won the prep league title. I'm not sure. So you're gonna have to fact check me on that. But I remember we had beaten Chadwick in the prep league rounds. I think we had actually beat them both times because we played them twice back in those days. But we ended up losing in the semifinal game.
Wow.
Jeff Fairley, if you're listening, we won't blame your pulled hamstring that clogged up the bases. That one inning, that was a rally killer.
Not that you're holding a grudge or anything. Yeah. What position did you play, Dave?
I played that infamous. I always say I played second base because it's just too hard to
Explain.
explain the short center field position.
Rover.
The magical fifth infielder.
But you were like were you like back on the infield dirt, kind of on the grass a little bit?
I mean, I played a deeper fifth infielder, but I didn't play deep enough where I couldn't field a ground ball and throw the guy out. So I had to play close enough that if I fielded the ground ball, I could throw the guy out. So it was truly a fifth infielder.
Interesting. And for those that don't know, Rio's field, center field was very short, and there was a hill, and then there was a huge net. So a center fielder out there it was really good thinking by Randall Johnson to do this. But my question is, Dave, did you guys do that on the road also?
We did do that on the road also. So even in a deep ballpark, which the semifinal field was, we played at, I believe, Cerritos College. So that's a huge field.
Yeah.
Yeah, we held true to that strategy.
So your left and right fielders, they would kind of play more towards the gap.
Yeah, and then Coach Johnson, he tried to have the scout card on each of the opposing team batter to kind of to shift more towards left or right for the two outfielders. Yeah.
Wow, Randalytics, we'll call it. Interesting.
So we were doing the shift before the shift.
Yeah. Well, five guys. I mean, you see that sometimes, like in the bottom of the ninth or something of a game where the winning run's on third and a fly ball probably wins it anyway. Well, they'll bring in five infielders, but not like routinely to do that. I mean, did teams like laugh at you guys for doing this?
Well, I think the answer is I don't recall them because maybe Rio's had been doing it for so long, they were used to it. I mean, I remember, like you're talking about basketball, I remember teams laughing at us, even our senior year. And we had a good junior year, so it wasn't like the local area knew we were a good basketball team because we had a good junior year. But I remember going to the East Coast, people laughing. But no, I don't remember that in baseball. Baseball, it's a big giant field. There's not as many fans. So,
different. Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, it's different.
Wow. No, that was a good run. Really, you guys, what a senior year. Finals in win a championship in football, finals in basketball, plus a state tournament run, and then the semis in baseball. I mean, by the end of your senior year, I mean, you guys had experienced it all. Was it tough in the sense of, man, I'm not going to play any ball anymore after that final loss?
Well, for me personally, it wasn't that. I think I was definitely going to miss the competitive sports and playing. So yes, the answer is yes, I would miss that. But at the same time, I was ready to graduate and get college started. I was ready.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
well, you left it all on the field. That's for sure. We talked about a couple coaches, but talk to me about Mr. Ken Drain, the impact he had on you. I know he was a guy that was very hard on players when they made mistakes. He could be bright red and pretty loud, but deep down he cared about all of us. And what was your experience? He's retiring right here. Had a great coaching career. What are your thoughts on Ken Drain?
Yeah, so he is retiring this year. All the listeners, August 14th, big retirement party at Care Park. So there's that public service announcement. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's our 30-year, my class's 30-year reunion. Wow. 30 years since we graduated from high school. Man, it makes me feel old just saying it. But yeah, we started Coach Drain. He started with us in 6th grade. And, if you listen to his podcast, we thought just as like he did, he would follow us all the way through high school. He took 1 year off and then he came back. So, I feel privileged and honored that we could say we were his first basketball team, first varsity basketball team. And it was all downhill from there. No, just kidding. Ryan Wiley, just kidding. But, anyways, yeah, he definitely instilled a lot of the principles that I still is my foundation and what I take to leadership in the corporate workplace is just very, very much the same principles about leadership and what he instilled in us. I think you told the story, I think either Rick or Todd, one of the podcasts, we were very, very saddened when he took that year break from us. I don't know if you recall this. It was the end of our freshman year and our sophomore year. During our sophomore year was when Coach Strain went back to junior high.
Oh.
So he was not even in high school when we were during our sophomore year. And I remember Francis Ossegard pulled our class into one of the rooms during the summer after our sophomore year and asked us, you guys didn't have a great year. And we're like, no, we didn't have a good year. We had a really we had a decent football season. We went to the semis and lost to the number one team. But our sophomore basketball season, I think we were under 500, and I think we were under 500 in baseball. So we didn't have a good year. And I remember him saying, "You guys didn't have a good year." We're like, "Yeah, we didn't have a good year." And I remember as this was yesterday, how would you guys feel if Coach Strain was your coach again? And I remember we all looked around and said yes.
Wow.
And for all the same reasons that Coach Strain said, like, hey, listen, we know his system. We know what he wants done on the court. It's going to work. And, here's a bunch of, sophomore kids telling at the time, I don't know if you want to call him the president or executive director of the organization, but yeah, he listened to us and it came to fruition.
Man.
So, yeah.
I remember hearing that. Great story. And yes, an incredible man who's really has had a great impact. And not so, anytime he spoke to, like in church or his club meetings, I mean, I like the sound of his voice. He knows how to paint a picture for you and kind of simplify things. So always appreciate Mr. Ken Drain.
Yeah, I mean, I remember he loved the Mammoth area. He would take us up there in our junior high days. And I remember, I think he would buy stuff, and I think he was spending his own money. Like he had this bright idea. Let's go river, let's buy an inflatable raft and float down the Owens River. And so junior high kids, we were 8th graders. We had, I think one of the kids had brought in their own inflatable raft. And so to make it possible for all the kids to do it, Coach Strain, I think, bought one himself. And we all piled in. We start floating them down the Owens River. We start floating. Coach Strain is in the bus. We lose sight of the bus. We don't know where Coach Strain is. We're just floating down the river, Matt. 8th grade kids down the Owens River in Kern Valley somewhere. And we're just going. We're like, we don't know where Coach Strain is. We're like, well, he didn't give us much instruction. And I swear, I think Coach Strain just knew, like he read it on the map and he kind of just figured out where he could go with the bus. And all of a sudden we saw the bus, after like hour floating down the river. We're like, hey, there's the bus. But other than that, we were just floating down the river unsupervised.
Great stuff. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
What could go wrong? But anyways, yeah. So yeah, because back in our freshman year, our top athletes in the class actually left after our freshman year. So guys that were actually better than Rick and Todd, in my opinion, they actually left our class after our freshman year. So actually, 3 of our top athletes actually left. If we had those guys, I probably wouldn't even play. I probably wouldn't even played.
Well, there's some truth to that. We experienced something like that too. So yeah, I was so fortunate in a sense, but also, hey man, come on, stick around. We could have a great high school career. Well, Dave, you've been out of high school a long time, as you mentioned, but you were someone who is an avid supporter of Rio Hondo Prep athletics. You are a big time football fan, of course. You got your polo on like I do. Why is it? Let's talk about the football program, I guess, specifically, or any of the athletic programs you want to. But why is it that you continue to be this great supporter of Rio Hondo Prep? My friends ask me all the time, why do you care so much? I'm like, well, I never was affiliated with the Rams or the Dodgers or whatever, but Rio Hondo, that's my foundation and where I went. So why is it that you continue to be such a big Rio Hondo Prep supporter?
Yeah, so easy question to answer for me personally. 2 reasons. There's 2 reasons why I believe I'm successful in what I do. One is my mom and dad, great foundation. My mom is like, she came over to this country with not a formal education. Same with my dad, but my mom built her own business as a professional seamstress and worked 7 days a week, 60, 70-hour weeks to raise the family, put my brother and I through school. And she did it all just, with intuition and hard work. She didn't have a business degree. She didn't have, financial degree, but she was able to do it, buy a house. She always say, I came over here with only $100 in my pocket and look what I did. I'm like, okay, mom, I can't beat that. So that is, and then the second reason is Rio Hondo Prep. And I do believe, and I mentioned this earlier, I believe in high school athletics because there are so many character building and life learning principles learned in that environment that's not in the classroom. So I am a big believer in high school athletics. And so those are the two reasons. And because it's my alma mater. So if I'm a big believer in high school athletics, it's a natural that I support my alma mater. And, clearly all my good friends, my peer group that I grew up with are now running the program. So I want to support them. Mark Carson, who I call Gordy, because that's his real name, not Mark. So Gordy, we've become really good friends over the years, and he's done a great job with the program. And Coach Strange retiring, so hopefully there's more opportunity for Gordy here. So I do want to also. So in the sense, I have a connection to the program through Gordy. But that's kind of my long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's fantastic. And there's, when Rio played Poly a few months ago, it was a big deal. It was, and there's people all over the country and maybe the world even watching, this little high school in Arcadia, California, playing a big football game at the Rose Bowl. It's just, so it's special. It takes me back too. It's been fun talking to so many different people here on the podcast about their experiences as well. It's a special place. And you do learn quite a bit of lessons there. You've mentioned the podcast quite a bit, Dave. I am assuming you're a loyal listener. It sounds like, at least to some of the big Rio names.
Yeah, I'm one of your 10 listeners. Come on.
Me and Bill Barnes are always like, I wonder who's out there listening.
So I do enjoy my weekly Wednesday weigh-in with Bill Barnes. So I do listen on a regular basis. I'll admit, I don't listen to the Monday morning podcast. I do listen to the Wednesday and Friday.
No worries. Yeah, I'm a little boring. I know. It's just a chance to keep to get everything I want to say that I don't say on the other days. And anyway, yeah, Mondays. I hear you. They're a little lower.
Yes, I did. I enjoyed I'll be honest, I enjoyed the Landing Goodwill podcast. I remember that one. Like, oh man, he was one of the first kids that went to Division I. I remember his team. I think it was your class. I think that's when I first started with the weight room stuff. Gordy came down and like, can we borrow your equipment for the summer? And he actually drove the truck down and borrowed my gym equipment for the summer. And then that's kind of how it all started. The support of the high school program was back in the Landon in your guys' day.
Yeah. Landon was 2 years younger than me, but he played up with us, and great athlete and a great player. It's fun.
But Tony, the NCAA ref, enjoyed that one.
Oh, Tony Padilla, yeah, that was a while back. He was cool. He's had some good stories, and got some more guests here coming up. It's still early in the day here. The Pat Taylor interview was released today. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that one.
Yes, I did listen to that one. I did listen to that one this morning. I never knew that Fernando story. I never heard that.
Wasn't that cool?
Oh, I wish I was one of those kids.
Yeah, no kidding. Come on, Patricio. That was an awesome story. And those are the things I've enjoyed hearing here, and just what a great man he is. You contributed to the Mr. Drain tribute we did for his birthday, his 70th birthday. That was awesome. Seeing how many guys stepped up and did a little voice message to him. That was one of my favorite ones I've done.
Yes, I enjoyed that immensely. Thank you for asking. I know Gordy reached out to me as well, but I just he is like a second father to me. He taught me a lot. He gave me my first regular job. Janitor.
Yeah, remember the club.
Yes, believe it or not, I don't know if I was the first one that did that dental office.
Really?
on Rosemead Boulevard. My brother and I did that dental office for 6 years. So know the dental office well.
Yeah.
So it's funny because now I spent the last 20 years in the dental industry, and I tell everyone, oh, I started off as the janitor.
Look what you can achieve. You just got to start emptying trash cans. That's it. That's hilarious. Yeah.
What so ironic. I literally been in the dental. Yeah, I've been in the dental industry for the last 20 years.
That's fantastic. Well, Dave, what about your career? You mentioned your dental career there. What did you start? Did you know you were going to be an accountant right after high school? What was your career path?
Yeah, so I remember I went to PCC, junior college, because, that was the most economical way to go. My parents didn't have all the money in the world. So I said, okay, and that's how my brother went. And I remember like my brother telling me like he's going to be studying accounting and finance. And I remember vividly while I was at PCC thinking I need a degree that I can get a job with. I remember saying that to myself, because if I majored in history or English, I'm like, I don't know if I'd be able to get a job with that other than be a teacher. And I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. I don't really have great patience. So I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. So I said, okay, my brother was already studying accounting. So I explored that. And I was always good with math as an Asian kid, we all are. So it came natural to me. So when I took accounting and some of the beginning accounting courses, it did come natural to me. And I decided to pursue that path. And, quite honestly, I do enjoy the accounting work. I do enjoy it. I don't do taxes. So I hate taxes, but I don't have to do taxes. I do the other accounting world. Everyone equates CPA to taxes, but there's this whole other job field out there that's non-taxes that CPAs do.
So you had a pretty structured, goal, and you just kind of check the boxes off to get to where you're at today. Just being the numbers guy.
Yeah. I mean, I went to Cal PCC, then Cal Poly Pomona. And I didn't go to USC or these big name brand schools, but I ended up at a very prestigious accounting firm coming out of college. So, all my starting group peers had all this school debt because they went to SC, Notre Dame, UCLA. And they're like, where'd you go? I went to Cal Poly Pomona, but I'm debt free.
Amen.
Here's a true story. So, this is another reason why I believe in Rio Hondo Prep football. Back to your early question.
Yeah.
My inside story is I got my professional start, my first accounting job at this big national accounting firm only because I played Rio Hondo Prep football.
No way.
You want to hear the rest of the story?
Absolutely.
So I was sitting there I had signed up to interview for this accounting firm on campus. He looks at my resume. He goes, we have a minimum GPA. I don't know how you even got this interview. That's how the interview started with me from this recruiter. And I said, well, sir, I just signed up. He goes, but you don't meet the minimum GPA. I said, okay. I just signed up and they gave me the time slot. And he kind of said, well, okay, well, since you're here, I guess we'll do the interview. That's kind of how it started. Then the next question was, why is your GPA so low? Now, thank goodness I had a good answer. I told him I worked full time. I was doing the janitor business. I was doing Wells Fargo bank teller. I had all these things going on. I was a little league umpire.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good job, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So,
quick money.
Yes. Yeah. So I had a good story. And the second thing was, what else I had going for me was I had this school project that I did very well in. That was at the top of my resume. It was a national tax competition where this firm had sponsored. So on the top of my resume, it said Arthur Anderson Tax Challenge, national finalist. So a group of 4 of us represented Cal Poly in this national tax competition sponsored by this accounting firm. And we finished top 10 in the country, and we were flown on the firm's expense bank account to represent Cal Poly at their national training center in Chicago. And we competed in a competition. We didn't do well at the nationals, but the fact that we got there, I was enough to put on my resume. So he naturally asked about that. So I joke about it's Rio Hondo Prep football. I got to believe it's probably more because of that one item that got me the job. Because his next question was, why aren't you interviewing for our tax department? Why are you interviewing for audit? And I said, oh, because I don't like tax. I just do good at it. So why does Rio Hondo Prep football the reason? Then he started saying, you know, these critical, they call them CBI interviews, critical behavior interviews. They ask a standard question. Give me an example of a time where you set a goal, you had to work with others to accomplish that goal.
Oh, perfect.
And I said, can I use a high school example? He goes, well, I don't really like going way that far back, but go ahead. So I told him the whole story of the championship football season. Blah, 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 blah. I told him the whole story. And then somehow he got, oh, what other sports do you play? I always play basketball and baseball. He looked at me, he goes, you play, and he goes, varsity? I go, yes, varsity. I go, yeah. Well, you don't get much kids playing varsity in all three sports. And I said, oh, I went to a very small, tiny private school that you probably never heard of in Arcadia, California. He goes, well, what is the name of it? I said, Rio Hondo Prep. And he chuckles. I said, oh, you have heard of it because you're chuckling. And he said, yes. He goes, well, how did you hear of it? My high school alma mater is Faith Baptist.
Oh, the team you guys beat in the championship.
I said, you know that story I just told about the high school championship and our goal and all that? I go, we beat Faith Baptist in the championship game. He goes, what? I go, yes. And then I started naming the players, and he knew the common coaches. One of the common coaches was named Estrada. He knew Estrada, and he played and the recruiter had played high school football for Faith Baptist, so he's familiar with 8-man football. So he was all into it. And then we clicked from there. So that's why I say Rio Hondo Prep is the reason why I got the job.
That is spectacular. One of the best stories I've ever heard. That is awesome. The rest is history. Here we are.
The rest is history.
Oh, man.
So here I am 20 years later at my second stint at a dental company. I've worked for 2 dental companies, and I've spent 5 years at Arthur Andersen at public accounting, where I was an auditor. So I would go audit the books and records of my clients. One of my clients was a large dental organization called Western Dental. They're all around California. So I eventually got hired by the CEO from Western Dental, and I became their CFO at 28 years old. It's hard to believe thinking that long ago. And I was their CFO for 13 years. And now I'm a CFO at Onsite Dental for the last 6 years. So yeah, it's been a long time, being in the dental world as CFO. I like to think I could read dental x-rays, but the dentists that I work with continue to remind me I don't have a dental degree. Sometimes I do, but yeah, anyways, that's how I got to kind of where I am today. And yeah, it's Onsite Dental is a much smaller company than Western Dental, but we're a very small niche player in the dental industry. What we're selling is a service where we bring a dental clinic or off practice onto large employer campuses. So that's kind of our business model versus your traditional dental companies are opening up in those shopping centers, and and they get like that end cap space or the corner lot, and they do more of a retail approach to dentistry versus Onsite Dental, where we're going to large employer campuses. So we're at like Intel, Facebook, NVIDIA. We go to, ConocoPhillips, Eli Lilly, all these like big companies with large campuses. So that's kind of what we're doing now.
Wow. Big time stuff there, Dave. Yeah, you're one of the great alums of Rio who's done some great things in your career world. That's awesome, man. One of the I remember hearing about you from Mark and Todd, and something they always said was, yeah, Dave Joe was at this sporting event, at that sporting event. It seemed like you were always at a Laker game or a Dodger game or even some other big sporting event. What are some of the big sporting events you've personally gone to as a spectator? And I don't know, how did all that come about?
Most of the tickets that I received were through my previous employer. my previous boss CEO was a big LA sports fan. So part of the deal was we had company tickets. So we had company tickets for all the Clippers and Lakers premier seats, and we had Dodger Dugout Club. So I got a lot of opportunity to go through, get tickets through the company. So I was there during the whole Kobe Shaq run, and I was there for the whole Kobe Paul Gasol run. So if you think of Kobe's two kind of teams,
Yeah.
I had the fortunate ability to go to a lot of those games because the company had tickets. But I'm a big sports fan myself. So I'm a big USC fan. I just gave up my season ticket seats to USC. I had them for 20 years. And during the Pete Carroll, I'm not a bandwagoner because I bought my first season tickets in 1996. Now that was the year they went to the Rose Bowl, but thereafter I went through the Paul Hackett era.
Ooh,
so I still had season tickets through the Paul Hackett era. But then Pete Carroll came. So I am not a SC bandwagoner because I did not go to the school. So I did buy my season tickets pre-Pete Carroll. But then when Pete Carroll came into town, I was fortunate enough and, had the ability to go on StubHub, and, I went to every national championship game and every bowl game that Pete Carroll had, I would go. And then, usually Mark Carson was a side beneficiary of that because I took him to a couple of Rose Bowl games. Rob Bazuzzi, another fellow Rio Hondo Prep alum who we happened to live 5 minutes from each other. We flew down to Miami for the 2005 national game and then went to the Orange Bowl. So that was very memorable because I got to go with Rod. We made it a whole thing. Like the night before, we went to the Laker, Miami Heat game when Shaq was on Miami Heat. So we made a whole weekend out of it. So I remember that. And then unfortunately, I was at the latest World Series with the Dodgers Astros. So, and where they lost.
Yeah. You know what? I just heard from Rod Bazuzzi, who I've never really talked to, but he said, hey, he reached out to me through social media, said, hey, it's Rod Bazuzzi, class of 92. Enjoy listening to your podcast. Keep up the good work. I said, hey, Rod, thanks so much. I had no idea who's listening. Would love to have you on sometime. And here's what he said. He said, that would be cool. You got to get my boys, Dave, Joe, and now for sure PC4 on the case too. So you came on. So now you got to, hey, you said, Rod, you said if I came on, you'd come on. So, and we already talked about Pete.
Anyways, big sports fan. Bazuzzi, it's funny because I would drag the Bazuzzi and his son CJ to a lot of those games. Nice. So yeah, unfortunately, Kellum, his youngest son, came on after I left Western now, so he did not participate in all the extra stuff that his older brother CJ did.
So in theory, Dave, Rio Hondo Prep football, which got you that job, also was, got you all those tickets to all those games as well.
This is true. Well, the job starts everything, right? So yes, all that's true. It's coming full circle. So that's why partly goes back to why I still support the school. Matt, to your earlier question, it's my small way of trying to, Matt was going through up in my nephew, Matt, Harry's son. He's graduated now, but I was trying to, support him. McKenna's still in high school there, my niece. So, I said, hey, are you ever going to use the weight room? She said, no. She's much like her mom, loves the arts.
I mean, it's got to be fun for you seeing your nephew and niece there at Rio, whether it's playing ball or anything, it's forming arts or whatever. I mean, that's got to be a blast for you, right?
Yeah, it's good to see. Matt's done very well. He's down in college now, trying to do his thing. So during COVID, he came live with me for a while, so that was like an experience. Yeah,
for sure. Well, Dave, we talked about a lot of fun things. Now we got to talk about something very serious, very, very serious. So be ready. Here we go. Are you ready? Okay. We got to talk about your golf game. What's your golf game looking like these days?
Oh man, I just revamped my whole swing because I had a very nasty, my whole setup with my iron strike. My driver has never been the problem. It's my iron play. So right now I'm a 16 handicap and I do play a lot. So once upon a time I was a 12, but I'm trying to do this new swing change for my iron play that got me back up to 16. But which is, for most average people, that's less than bogey golf. That means you're usually scoring from 88 to 92 on any given day. So it's enough to get me around most courses, but I do enjoy the game. As I got older, I needed to find the sport that would keep me outside, give me good exercise. I like being outside, and more importantly, it's a sport that I could play on my own or with buddies.
Yeah.
So it allows for that. So one of my good friends who I hired, he actually we started as coworkers. I hired him to be my number 2 at Western, and we became really, really good friends, and we are still today. He got me into golf, so that helped. And yeah, so I do enjoy it. Yeah, it's like this morning, I played 9 holes this morning. I couldn't, for whatever reason, hit the iron. But on Tuesday, my birthday, I had the round of my life for 16 holes. Let's not talk about holes 17 and 18. But I was on pace to beat my personal record. I was like 5 over. I was 5 over through 16 holes, which I never am.
Mm.
And it's not like we're playing from junior teeth. Usually we play 6,300 yards. So that's pretty decent for me. I usually like to play from anywhere from 6,300 to 6,500 yards. That's usually my sweet spot.
Wow.
Yeah, because if I start playing like 6,800 or 7,000, I'm using woods for every par 4. So that's not as fun.
What's the nicest place you've played, or maybe a couple places?
I played a lot of nice places. So part of, I do like, I'm frugal by nature, but when it comes to like vacations and destinations, I'm not as frugal. So I've been to Pebble Beach twice.
Wow.
Yeah, so I played both Spyglass, Spanish Bay, and Pebble. I actually played Kiowa Island, believe it or not, 2 years ago. So that was where Phil Mickelson just recently won the PGA Championship. Mm-hmm. So I did play that ocean course, and it is as tough as when they say it's tough on TV, it's tough. I played Kiowa. Yeah, so there's still a lot more on the bucket list. I turn 50 next year, and everyone asked me, what are you going to do? And I said, well, naturally, I'm going to do a huge golf trip.
That's awesome.
So I don't know which bucket list I'm going to hit yet, but yeah, it'll be a big golf trip next year.
That is cool. That is really cool. And you follow golf. You talked about Mickelson, and you watch at least on Sundays a little bit, tune in some of the majors.
I do. I watch a lot. I pretty much come down to only watching football and golf on TV nowadays.
That's not bad.
I don't watch. I used to have fantasy baseball. Ever since I stopped doing fantasy baseball, I don't really watch baseball. I keep track of the Dodgers. Still a Dodgers fan. Zero NBA. I'm
with you.
Ever since I stopped working at Western, I don't go to so I stopped going to Laker games. Kobe retired. After Kobe retired, I pretty much stopped watching all NBA. Yeah, so I don't watch any NBA.
I'm with you. Yeah, it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a little bit of hockey. I do enjoy hockey, but
I love hockey. And I had on here tape delay, recorded the game 6 of the Montreal Vegas semi. I did see that Montreal did win here in overtime, so they are going to Stanley Cup final. So you can you said you did you say you were going?
I had already purchased game 7 tickets. So for my birthday was this past Tuesday. So we're recording on June 25th. I'm not sure when you're going to publish this. My birthday was on June 22. So I was going to go to Vegas for my birthday. One of my close friends, the one that got me into golf, Brad, he lives out there. He works out there full time now. So we're going to go play a round of golf over there by his house. But yeah, I had bought tickets for Saturday night in case there was a game 7.
Wow. Well, there isn't, but yeah, that would be cool. I got to see a Kings game in Vegas last year. Oh man, that place is awesome. Great arena, great fans. That's one great time.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that arena, that T-Mobile arena.
Oh man,
yeah,
really cool. Well, kind of, I guess in closing here, kind of on the golf note, I didn't prep you for this, but I've often heard this question asked to a few different people. And I thought, man, that's a good question to ask people, especially those who are really into golf. If you could have a golf foursome, and if you want to add people, that's fine. But if you could play golf with three others or however many, however many you want to pick, who would it be? It could be someone from, who's no longer with us. It could be someone, anybody. I mean, who would it be if Dave Joe could play golf anywhere with any group of people?
That is a great question. I've heard you ask that question before. I think about it at the time, but I really haven't gotten much think about it. So yes, this is not rehearsed. I would say Coach Strain, because Coach Strain is actually a really good golfer. John Wooden.
Ooh.
I would love to play with John Wooden. And the fourth, who would round out my foursome? I would probably say, and this will be a tough one because now you only have one chair left.
Yeah.
You don't want to leave anyone out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you can have a second card of guys. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe that's even a better little scramble.
Yeah.
I don't know, only because you always want to know. I always am infatuated with who's really running the government. Is it a cabal or is it just so only because of that, I'm all fascinated with what's really going behind the scenes of the White House. So I probably would say someone like Ronald Reagan. Hey, tell me the truth. We all know Nancy, probably ran the thing, but tell us what we don't know.
That's a great answer. That is a great answer. Oh man. Well, that is great. I know you've golfed with Coach Drain quite a bit, and yeah, that's really cool, man. Well, yeah, you play quite a few times, right? A week.
Yeah, I do. 9 holes on the weekdays, and then 18 holes on the weekends. But I do it early morning. See, that's the trick. So that's part of the reason why I joined a membership is access to morning tee times, because public is actually very difficult to get morning tee times. That's when everyone wants to play. And with a membership, I could get the morning tee times, and the pace of play is really fast. So we get done in 3.5 hours, whereas most people, if you go public, it's 4.5, 5 hours. We get done in 3.5, and I tee off at 6:30, 6:45. So even on the weekends, I'm done by 10:30. So I got the whole day. Yeah,
that's that's insane. Yeah, that early morning, that's a great time, especially on the golf course.
Well, nothing more relaxing to me than, I'm drinking my coffee, walking down that first fairway with the sun popping up.
You got that. That is beautiful. Well, Dave, I really appreciate you doing this. I have bugged you a long time, and you found time for me. So I really appreciate that. You're a busy man, doing a lot, golfing, and of course your job. So happy belated birthday. Look forward to your 50th next year. Enjoy your last year in your 40s, my friend.
I will. 50's the new 30.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, we'll get to see about Pete Clark and Rod Bazuzzi and anybody else you have in mind, man. Throw them my way. This has been so much fun, and I really appreciate it, Dave.
All right. Good job, man. Keep it up, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for listening, too.
All right. Take it easy.
Take it easy. Bye, Dave.
Bye.
Wow, well, that was a lot of fun recording with Dave Joe here in late June, but this will probably be out in July at some point. But man, what a guy, what a great football player, what a great guy, what a great man, just as a great supporter and contributor to Rio Hondo Prep athletics. Some funny stories, some just I can't say it enough. It really was a lot of fun. So thank you to Dave Joe, and yeah, looking forward to more people coming on, as we like to do on Fridays here. Have a nice long form conversation, and it can be about anything. Could be about high school sports, could be about career path, just life's journey is what I like to look at it as. So thank you for the continued support from the loyal listeners out there. And again, looking forward to some Rio Hondo Prep football in the fall, and also just more podcasts like this, chatting with some friends and catching up. So Guys, thank you for listening to this edition of the Get Home Safe podcast. Have a wonderful weekend as we are here in the middle of summer, and things are looking up. Things are looking up in a lot of different areas. So have a great weekend. Have a great summer. But guys, as always, no matter what you're doing, whether you're out on the town or rounding third base, get home safe.